So, what if I told you that pre pandemic, about 80% of women know that doing something in the form of self care or self nurturing or self soothing, whatever word you want to use for that, that only of those 80%, only about a third of them actually do it? What if I told you that? Would you believe that to be true? Well, it is, my friends, it is. And I actually, on purpose, picked statistics pre pandemic to look at this because post pandemic, we are in even hotter water with this. And if you want to learn a little bit more about why we find ourselves in that hot water and what we need to do to get out of it, then keep listening today. Welcome back, everybody. All right. So today we're really going to jump in here and we're going to be talking about hustle culture, which is one of the leading reasons why women cannot find a work life balance of any sort, especially when work and life are in the same place. So this could be you're working from home at a job, but it could mean that your job is working at home doing caretaking, household, whatever management, all of those things. They even have it worse than some of us that have a place to go work. I know that sounds weird, but it is actually true. And even pre-pandemic, this has been an issue, but post-pandemic, some of the statistics that we're seeing on the rising burnout, the rising amounts of depression and anxiety in women far exceed the rising of what they are in adults in general. So the women and men, when you look at them together, or just looking at the male population, women are suffering, and women in midlife in particular are suffering. Women over 40 are seeing high amounts of depression and anxiety. We're not doing okay after the pandemic. That is the reality of this. So today I want to dig into what's happening here, how hustle culture really feeds into that, and what do we need to do to get ourselves the heck out of there, right? Now, this is a series. So if you haven't heard the other 3 podcasts that I've done in this series, I would really encourage you to go back and listen to the 3 previous podcasts on midlife mastery, mastery in relationships, and even on taking care of yourself financially, what it would look like to be a financial feminist, what it would look like to really step into making empowered decisions and kind of pulling yourself out of the spiral that women in midlife usually feel, the stress they usually feel around resources and finances and figuring out how they're going to support themselves, especially those of us that are single, that don't have a partner, that are contributing to our household incomes. Like the pressures of that are real. And so I focused on that specifically. Today, we're really going to pick at this idea of work-life balance, and we're going to pick at this idea of hustle culture and how that impairs women's ability to care for themselves. So 2 areas that are, if you Google, there are about 5 topic areas that will pop up for you that are like the 5 leading areas of stressors. And those are what we're going through in this series. And those are having difficulties in relationships, difficulties with career or around finding enough resources financially, difficulties with health and wellness. Like this is the time in our life where everything aches and perimenopause and menopause is happening. And, health is real, like health issues are real. But also with this is this idea of really difficult times in that work-life balance or in dealing with multiple stressors. Now, this is obviously because women in midlife often have their hands in a lot of pots. So we're working, we're caretaking family, we're probably caretaking older family members, younger family members, the whole kit and caboodle, right? And what I want you to do is, if you haven't gone back and looked at those earlier podcasts, please do, because it'll help you kind of understand where we've evolved to today. But I also would strongly encourage you in the notes, go and click on my free 30-minute one-on-one coaching session. I am doing these for you because I want to help women in midlife to figure out where in these 5 areas they're having the most difficulty, right? And what it is that I suggest that you do, an individualized plan that just helps you to see where am I most vulnerable here, and what could I be doing to counterbalance that. No obligation, no joining any programs needs to happen, nothing like that. It just is, on the face of it, a free 30-minute one-on-one coaching session. Hope that you enjoy it. Hope that it brings something to you. Hope that it helps get you intrigued and you listen more, because certainly I will just keep up this podcast week to week. And I am here to help women in midlife make midlife the life of their dreams, like really design a life that they want to be living in, not one that's been designed for them or that they were told is the life that they should want. None of that. I want you to design the life you want. And that's what my podcast is all about. So today, when we talk about this with the, hustle culture in mind, why is it that we're in this thing to begin with? What is this hustle culture? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Because it isn't just women, it's men, it's all of us. Why are we in this hustle culture? Well, I talked a little bit about that internalized oppression idea last week or in my last podcast. And what I am trying to get at here is those ways in which we don't feel good enough, but we're doing the work of making ourselves not feel good enough. If you are not good enough on your own, if you are not enough, if you don't have this kind of money, live in this kind of house, drive this kind of car, have this kind of family, have this kind of career trajectory, if you don't have those things and you're not good enough without those things, you will be on the pursuit of that the whole time in your life. You will always be joining into that hustle culture. But then hustle culture further compromises your ability to be good enough in these areas. And so you still hustle more, and then you still compromise more, and then you hustle more. And this is that circle that you find yourself in. This is a hamster wheel, my friends. This is not a marathon. This is not something that has an actual end goal to it. It feeds itself. Hustle culture is a way that we think we are working towards all of these goals. But in actuality, what we're doing is we're participating in the unenviable pursuit of something that you can never arrive at. Who the hell decides what's good enough? Right? No one of us does. This is a cultural, social, family, religious amalgam of ideas and constructs, definitions that make no sense when you line them all up together. The problem is we don't line them all up together very often. And that really is what catches us. So if you just buy into the fact that being thin is the best way to look pretty as a woman, and you hustle to look thin, but you never question the fact that, does it really make any sense in a human being body that could have so many different DNA genetic expressions with all sorts of different environmental influences that also can layer on that there would be any ability for the majority of us to be in that pretty place, right? Okay. So if you think that we're not all supposed to be pretty, great. Then why are you chasing it? Then why are you hustling for it, right? You still are hustling for it. So it doesn't make sense, right? If you're going to tell me that your argument is, well, not all people should be pretty, that the normative curve says it's only the people in the middle that are closest to that ideal. Okay. Then why are you over here subjecting yourself to this, right? Why are you hustling to get thin if you believe not all of us can be thin? It doesn't make sense, my friends. So these are the kinds of, they're the book of life rules. These are those constructs, the social programming and conditioning that we've grown up with. Nobody questions it. It's just there in the background, and we're hustling for it at all times. And the hustling is what's killing us, right? So this idea of this stressor where it's life work balance isn't great, or that we're not dealing with multiple stressors at the same time as well when we hit midlife. So if you're, Googling for those top 5, this one will come up quite often. Or I'm kind of lumping into this, even our health and wellness is getting more compromised by this time in our life. Why is all that? It's because we are on the hamster wheel of the hustle culture, my friends. And if we don't choose to get off, if we choose to just not pay attention to these constructs not making sense and making empowered choices for ourselves to choose it or not choose it. Now, I talked about empowerment in my last podcast, but it's coming up here again in this theme. If we're not doing that and getting off of this hamster wheel, we're going to kill ourselves for the bigger principles of these oppressive ideas of what is the best, what is enough, what is good enough. We can't be doing this. If we want to choose the life and design the life that we want to live in, part of that design is going to be that we don't aspire to a ideal that A, is not serving us, and B, is probably not attainable and never was supposed to be. It was put there to keep us in the hustle, which keeps us buying products and, getting things and doing things to work towards something that we can't get to, so that we just keep in the working towards it. So it makes sense that by the time you hit midlife, and this is women and men, it makes sense that by the time we hit midlife, like, we're dead dog tired. We have been hustling for a hot minute, my friends, and we are dead dog tired with this. We're not going to be able to sustain the pace of hustle that we did earlier in our lives. By the time we hit this spot, life really kind of gets us. And I think some of the sadder stories that really exemplify this for me are ones like my mom. So I'll talk a lot about specifics about my family, but I'm gonna go into some detail today. So my mom, she did a lot of the things that this 80% of women who know better, right? That know that they should care for themselves. But on the other hand, only about a third of them are actually acting on that. She was like that. It wasn't that she didn't know that self-nurturing and putting herself first and taking care of herself in some ways would have helped her to be a better version of who she was as a mom and in her job and any of those things. It's not that she didn't know. It's that she couldn't put it into action, that all of those definitions and the hustle culture of it really kept her chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. She chased weight issues in her life. She chased, wanting to start a career after raising 5 kids, and feeling like way behind the 8 ball. She worked for guys that, were younger than her and just did not have any idea what they were talking about in her industry. And it was really frustrating because as a female voice in the 80s, maybe 90s, no one was listening. No one was hearing that from her. And so she chased this hustle culture for a long, long time. And I think it was, somewhere in that late 50s, early 60s, where she really started to make some empowered decisions. Like, she quit the jobs that didn't work for her. She started, kind of working part-time-ish, doing something else. She chose to divorce my father at that time. She had finished her master's in her 50s. She was still kind of hustling within that, but she, at this point was taking that and doing something very, very different. Not what the masters would have said, now take this and do this thing in your career. She was taking it a whole different way. She had kind of created this side hustle of retreats and some other things with a friend of hers that they were doing on the side, but really felt passionate about. She was stepping into all of those things in her late 50s, early 60s. And she was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a terminal cancer that we had her in a lot of experimental, treatments of different kinds, but they said she had about 1.5 years. She made it a little over 3 years. And this is the sad story that I want to prevent for lots of women, that by the time we realize we're too tired, we've got to take a better look at this. we've got to start caring for ourselves in a different way if we want to really step into those empowered decisions to live the life we love, which makes us better versions of ourselves, which makes us better versions of the caretakers we are in all the different places that we caretake, with people, with things, with whatever. It could be your career, it could be your family, it could be your neighbors. I don't really care where it is, but I know you, if you're a woman in midlife, you've got your hands in some of those pots. And the saddest stories are the ones where the actual hustle broke you down. And there were some correlations between things that she did, and the diet culture and the exercise. And, she smoked a lot early in her life, a little bit later in her life. She quit for a long time in the middle. Like there were choices that she made that helped her numb what was killing her in the hustle culture that then fed into getting a health condition. Now, this is not my area of expertise, but I promise you there are direct correlations between our physical health and our emotional well-being. I know that if you're not taking care of the anxiety and the stress and just the heaviness of the whole hustle culture is having physical implications. It's literally taking years off your life, my friends. There's evidence from the adverse childhood experience study that was done by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. It's now held by the CDC, all of the statistics and continued research in this area. It started in the 90s, peeps. And what it shows is pretty scary. It shows if you've had like 3 or more of these adverse childhood experiences, that your life expectancy drops, that the percentage at which you get different health issues, diabetes, metabolic disorders, respiratory illnesses, heart, cardiovascular problems, that all of those go up exponentially, right? And we know this just based on the fact that you had these experiences. If we as a culture really were going to come at this, head on, we would use things like that to change and transform how we do healthcare. You have a 4 on your ACEs. Oh, I'm going to come after your metabolic disorder like you already have it. I'm going to start treating prediabetes before I see the indicators of prediabetes. I want to be sure that your body, because we know now has this much higher a percentage rate of getting those disorders, that we are on it. If you have a 0, if you have a 1 on that score, not so much. If you have a 9 or a 10, whoo, way different thing. And it's not just the health conditions, it's the mental health conditions that go with it. These are predictors of having major issues later in your life. And it makes sense, right? I'm a trauma therapist by trade. What's happening here is that we are seeing that a child whose resources are limited, they need the adults in their life to really help offset what their internal resources don't have for them. If they're under stress and you're not giving them what they need to feel soothed and safe and secure, then they hit their limit faster than anybody else because they don't have the resources to access yet. And what happens is living in that kind of a traumatic internal experience of fight or flight all the time changes how their nervous system works, changes then how their physical system works. Most of the fight or flight system is in the gut, heart, lungs area. It is impacting how our bodies function. I promise you. And so one of the saddest stories that I hear is when women finally kind of catch up to, oh, I see, I could step into these empowered decisions and do something different for myself. But now, because of the impact of the hustle culture on my body over time, I don't have it. I don't have it to do. And I'm not saying that men don't get this little sentence either, but I just want to be sure to be focusing for women on let's catch this earlier. I would rather see you in your 40s figuring this out and maybe compensating enough so that you're not in your 60s, with failing health that isn't going to give you the life expectancy that you want, that isn't going to give you the opportunity to step into some of those decisions the way that you want. Hustle culture is killing us, period. End of sentence. Drop the mic. That is what's happening. And if we don't make choices to step out of it, there is no way to find life and work balance. So, one of the things that I also see that happens for women in midlife is that there's this choice point. Yeah, you might be too tired. Yeah. Yeah, you might feel like, I can't wrestle this anymore. And so I'm going to have to make a different choice. Yes, you're hitting the cliff of some of those social currencies, like aging is not sexy, apparently. Aging is not beauty, apparently, right? Like our standard beauty ideal in America is very much a young person who has a certain weight and size and look and skin tone and all of the things. Like many of us aren't going to fit into that. But certainly when you hit midlife, there's a lot of those social currencies that then drop off. It's like a cliff. So some women, when they hit here, are now ready and more motivated to kind of work around it and make up new rules for their lives and step into things in an empowered way. But some double down. And I think that was my mom. I think part of what in hindsight now and what I know now as a clinician, in hindsight, I can tell you that she was one that got more into diet culture, that got more into work culture, she doubled down on being the best of the best of the best in any capacity that she could and hustled harder as a way to compensate for her social currency going down. And in so doing, it kind of sealed the deal for herself. I mean, you can't really see that coming that predictably, but in hindsight, you can see the correlation is quite clear. So if she had chosen earlier not to double down and to make different choices for herself, to work kind of part-timey and in jobs she wanted, and to put herself and her efforts into this, the retreat thing that she was doing with her friend, and, living the life that she wanted to live and designing the life that she wanted to be in, would that have then had implications for her health? Yeah, most likely it would have. And you can't go back and rewrite history. What you can do, my friends, those of you that are listening to me right now and hear what I'm saying, what you can do is take a self-assessment of, where in the heck am I at then in this? Now, part of the 30-minute one-on-one coaching that I'm offering for free right now is to take a really good look at this piece. And what we're going to be looking at is the indicators of where, your investment in caring for yourself is versus participating in this kind of hustle culture. What we're also going to be looking at, which is interesting because it doesn't seem like it's directly related, but it's where you fall in fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So a fixed mindset is one that doesn't think that you can exert much change. Like things are kind of predestined. Once you've made certain decisions, you're kind of down a certain tunnel. This is, for example, people that think that like intellect is something that is just born, or, you have it, you don't have it. Right. So there's no way to learn or change your intellect capability or ability or range over time. You think it's a fixed thing. People with growth mindset would say, no, you can, like, the brain is malleable. It can change at all times. I might have looked really dumb when I was in high school, but guess what? I wasn't really invested in that. I was invested in boys, or I was invested in, my drama career or being an emo or whatever I was when I was in high school, but I was not invested in the intellect side of things. But now I'm in my 40s. I really would like to expand what I know and my knowledge base. And gosh, I might even go back and start a different career and go back to school. So somebody with a growth mindset sees this as always the potential for growth. Somebody with a fixed mindset really sees it as, some of these things are just like, there's a little variance, but it's pretty fixed where it's going to be. And so it's kind of a combination of both. When I do the assessment with you, we'll kind of be looking for, what are these indicators of how much self-care you're participating in? So are you one of the third that knows better self-care. You know you're supposed to be doing the things to take care of yourself, but you're, spending less than 30 minutes a day on any of those. Are you one of those women? Or are you one of the women that are, in a different category? Even though, listen, I think another third of them were somewhere in the 60-minute range, which still isn't enough time in caring for the self to off balance, right? The work life balance really is about self other balance. So we're going to be looking at the indicators that will tell you where your vulnerabilities, where your, places are that you're likely to kind of push yourself into hustle culture instead of counterbalancing that with taking care of yourself. So work-life balance, what I want you to be thinking about is it's not a work-life thing, it's a self-care, other care thing. And other care, that encapsulates a lot of things. It doesn't mean just people, but it means like putting my career ahead of my own, well-being. So that can be things as simple as indicators for that are things like how much sleep are you getting? Sleep is huge, my friends. We locked a bunch of college kids in a basement in the 70s and made them go crazy, legit see and hear things that were not there because we sleep deprived them. So sleep is huge for health. And we have seen the research, hold this up over and over again. So this is one of those indicators that I might look at with you. Like, where is your sleep at? Because if you stay up late to make sure that you get the projects in, the compromise is that you're compromising yourself. So there's less of you in the next project, and there's less of you on the next project, and there's less of you on the next project. Finally, you start to, collapse even in your career that you think you've hustled and put all this time in. You're compromising it actually by short-sighting, getting items done over getting quality sleep that keeps the vessel that does the work, the tool, you that does the work at its highest capacity, right? So those are kind of those indicators of self-care versus other care, that work-life balance that we're going to be looking at. So for women, I'll go back to something I said earlier. For women whose work is their home, who are primary caretakers for the people in the home and for the home itself, and didn't necessarily go out and do a career outside, they have a harder time finding those distinctions of self-care versus other care. They have a harder time with the social conditioning, the rules, those life rules that I've talked about that tell them if they take care of themselves, that it's somehow compromising the care of others. And so it's selfish in some way. I would say that care for women who are the primary caretakers of others in their life, that self-care is one of the most selfless acts that they take because it is so countercultural, because there are so many profound messages about selfishness around it, that we really have to push ourselves into that discomfort I was talking about in my last podcast. So to take the safe route and doing for others before doing for myself, I need to push myself into that discomfort of taking care of me and getting some sleep. And somebody doesn't get to bring brownies to the bake sale tomorrow, because if I don't get this sleep, then I'm compromised. And if I'm compromised, there's less of me to give to everybody tomorrow, and less the next day, and less the next day, and less. And you hit those sad stories earlier in your life where you've depleted this vessel, you've depleted yourself so much, there's no way to get into balance again. So what I'm hoping to do with these one-on-one coaching sessions is to give you an individualized plan of, here's where your vulnerabilities are with this, here's what I would suggest that you do. That is really no obligation. I just want to give it to you. I just want to empower women because I know that you touch so many people in your life and so many things in our world that you will elevate all of us if I can help elevate you. So that's what this is about. Go to the notes for today's podcast, click on that link, and make sure to set up your 30-minute one-on-one session with me. So that's really, what we're talking about today. We're talking about, taking care of our health. We're talking about having more balance, being able to manage more stressors. It's a pretty simple solution that is really effortful to put into place. So that's what I want to kind of hone in on. It's not something that I think I take lightly or that I want you to take lightly. The concept of self-care and balancing and having better self care over other care. The concept itself is a simplistic one, but the effort that goes in to pushing past cultural values, societal values, family values, religious values that tell you things like you should not do that. The, how about just legitimately, you show up with no brownies at the elementary school and you get, the stink eye from the PTA and the other mothers when you hear legitimately heartfelt things from people that love you that are like, I really think that you're spending a little too much time like taking care of this for you, and you really should be spending more time with your kids. This is what we do. This is how we take care of them. Like, I really think that your, endeavors and making sure that you're home and having a good balance and getting to the gym on time and not putting that extra mile into our projects at this business is that I don't think you should be doing that. Like, they are heartfelt where they're coming from, but they're in service to a culture that keeps you in hustle. So going back to a quote that I talked about last week, will you lose people? Will they leave? Will they not like you? If you start to make choices for yourself, if you start to say to yourself, I am making this choice to help me, not to help others. I am making this choice to help me so that I have a better version of me to help others. It's hard to do in the face of people that still very much believe that self-sacrifice is somehow a quality that you should aspire to have. So you will be going counterculture, you will be going counter values of the people that you run circles with. It's hard to do. You need a community around you. You need people that are going to help lift you up with this. And you definitely need to know what's your prescription, what's the individualized plan that's going to help you to best do that. But that's my job here, folks. So I want you to be calling in, setting up those 30-minute free one-on-ones. I've been really enjoying the ones that I've been doing so far and helping women have some of these aha moments about where, on the pulse of things, where they need the most help and what my suggestions are for them specifically, instead of just kind of these general areas that the 5 podcasts of this series are talking about. So next week is our last one. And next week, we're going to be focusing in on finding life purpose, meaning, personal growth, like how all of those go together. That one of the areas that women in midlife find they have the most regrets about. They've done a lot of things for a lot of people. They spent so much time doing that, they lost sight of themselves. And now they have a lot more time for themselves and don't know where to begin, don't even know how to start. So we're going to talk about, why is it that that's one of these 5 major stressors, and what is it that you can do to pivot past that. You don't have to stay stuck in that space. There's a lot of things that we can be doing, but we need to be asking ourselves some hard questions about what do I need to be doing in my life to want to be invested in myself again, and to be able to align myself with something that has meaning for me and that keeps me moving forward. If I'm not going to do hustle culture, I'm going to have something to attach to, right? So that's what next week is. And that'll be the final in this series on the major stressors that women face in midlife and what my suggestions are to counterbalance that, to help you learn to love your story.